Glad you remember how to do it. All right. I think we're a minute or two past 12:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Well, I don't know how. Okay. David's note taker. God, I love AI. Big Brother is watching. Love how, it's like Zoom. It's kind of, I think we had some issues last week, which I'm sorry for. I was trying to make sure that everyone was blind copied when I sent the link out, because some people have said, oh, you need to, don't share this. I tried to do that. Zoom didn't like it, but we push on. So, this is obviously one of the two big plant sales that we do every year. This is always very important for the gardens. It's a big part of our earned revenue that allows us to keep doing what we do. And it's also, I got to say, it's kind of fun, bringing new plants out here. My goal always is to, have a lot of favorites that people are familiar with, but also to bring things that you're not quite seeing anywhere else. That's the goal. I mean, everyone who knows me by now knows I'm a plant geek. We've got a couple things in here that were cuttings that we got from like the Ralston Arboretum or things like that I guarantee you will not find anywhere else, because Lord knows when I was trying to find photos, I could not find photos of them. But it's a fun thing. It's a huge team effort for the gardens team to get everything together. Yeah, make sure it's getting my good side. And get that thing higher so it doesn't see the chin. I'm working on it. But we'll go ahead and let's see. Yeah, there we go. Just a little bit of housekeeping that we always do. Our next Tuesday gardening series, we actually have Greg Page from the Ralston Arboretum coming to give a talk about plant collecting. I've known Greg for probably about 20 years. He was down at Bartlett, the research lab down there. Just one of my favorite people in the world. He's done plant collecting. That one photo is in Japan on the left, and the other photo is him with Andrew Bunting, and I think he's holding on to Andrew's back belt so he doesn't go down the hill. And those two, it's like, two peas in a pod. If where one is, the other is. I'd love to get Andrew down here. He works with the Pennsylvania Hort Society, but they've done a lot of plant collecting. That project was actually a conservation project for Magnolia fraseri, which is kind of endangered in the natural environment. So they're trying to do some conservation work. But Greg is just a fun guy. And he was like, okay, I need to get out there and see what you've been doing. I'm like, well, give a talk. That'll get you out here. So definitely, don't miss Greg's talk. Also, the other important woman in my life, aside from Michelle, Adrian will be giving a talk on container gardening. Michelle's container class is, that sold out really quick, but this is another opportunity to learn some tips and tricks from another extremely talented woman. No bias on my part. Adrian, if you're listening, you're wonderful. But it's with the Tuesday gardening series, we're always trying to bring some different perspectives and learning opportunities. Now diving into the usual details with the plant sale. Most of y'all should know this by now. We've got kind of a routine after the talk today. A link will go out to the pre-order form. So if you're a friend of the gardens, you can pre-order things. If you see something, it's like, I've got to have that. I think, we've already had someone, has said, I have to have, there's a really cool tree in here, and I think we have 5. But it's that opportunity to get onto some of those really cool things. But that will go out after the talk. You can order up until about the Wednesday before the sale at 8 o'clock, because it takes time to process all these orders. So that gives me a little breathing room to get these things done. We try our best to stay on top of inventory to make sure that we didn't sell out of things and you're still buying. So ideally by spring, we will have an automated system that has all the technology and all the bells and whistles, and John can sleep at night. Um, again, friends, you can, not only can you pick up your plants on Friday, but if you didn't get your order in, you can shop then. You can continue to shop, which we highly encourage. I am an enabler. Um, and of course, one thing we learned a couple years ago, adding taxes, because that was hitting us. We were basically losing 7% of everything we were doing. Um, if you aren't a friend, shame on you. But there's still hope for you. You can go online and become a friend. You can do that up until about the Sunday before on, I thought I got all the dates right, but that should be September 22nd. No, that's Sunday. Is it right? Okay. I can't count right now. But you've got to have that cut off because we have to have it trickle through wakes processing. So we see you signed up. But you can still get time in there, and as always, the sale is out on the front lawn of Reynolda House. That gives us plenty of room to have lots of cool plants. And the sale on that Saturday will run from 8 to 2. Come on in. So, again, that link will go out shortly after the talk. If it doesn't show up, first step, go check your spam. Make sure it's not there. Check those things. If you still don't see it, feel free to email me at john@reynolda.org, and we'll figure out what's going on because I will connect you with Lance. So without that, let's dive into the fun part of this, and let's talk about some plants. This was a conference that I spoke at a couple of years ago when we showed up at the hotel. I'm like, I'm with my people. And with the sale, obviously I can't cover everything in this talk. I'll try to run through even some of the things we don't have slides just so everyone knows. Some tried and true things are obviously in here. Looking at perennials, obviously everyone is always focused on pollinators, and there's so many great plants out there. They don't have to be native. Nectar is nectar, sugar is sugar. This is a fantastic hybrid between a European species and a Midwest species that blooms pretty much all summer long, covered with pollinators the whole time. Sometimes if it starts to look a little ragged during the summer, you can hack it back, it'll reflush. But this agastache or hyssop or anise hyssop really just gives you a lot of bang for your buck in terms of flowering, and it's always covered with insects. Another plant that I would not garden without. Someone actually told me they did not like this plant, and I'm no longer talking to them. I don't judge, but yes, I do. Amsonia hubrichtii. There's a number of different ones out there. They've been doing some breeding, but just the old standard species gets these wonderful pale blue flowers in the spring. Also gets amazing fall color. And one thing I saw, we were at a friend's house, a fellow gardener, and they had cut the stems and put them in their floral arrangements, and they paired that with like a dark, dark purple dahlia, and I was like, I never would have thought of using that as a cut flower. But just fantastic fall color. It's one of those few perennials. Most perennials do not get great fall color, but this one does. And just the texture in the garden, it's just this fine, billowy texture. Even when you get a little wind, you get movement in the garden, which is always nice. And they are tough as nails. Perennial plant of the year back in 2011, that always is a good indicator of a good plant. So Amsonia hubrichtii. Obviously, I think we would be run out of town if we did not have butterfly weed, but we do have butterfly weed. These are always a challenge to grow in the nursery, but we've got a good crop of these this year. This is one plant that I will advise that when you're looking to plant it, make sure that's where you want to keep it. They do not like being transplanted. You dig them and it just doesn't work out very well. Also, you can cut them back a little bit and they will reflower for a second time. Probably with just the straight species, you're more than likely just going to get the orange. There is a nice yellow form out there. If you get an opportunity to go out like Doughton Park up on the Blue Ridge Parkway, there's yellows, there's oranges, there's intergrades in between. There's a really cool red flowered one that I still am dying to track down and see how we could get. But this is obviously, we hear about monarchs. They're kind of like the poster child of saving the insects. milkweed is a critical thing for their life cycle because it actually has a sap in it. They eat it. It makes them poisonous. It protects them. But that's a critical thing. Obviously, the flowers are a nectar source, but it's those leaves for the caterpillars. So this is one that you also need to be comfortable with getting it denuded by the caterpillars. That's what they are needing to do. So Asclepias tuberosa. This is another one. Holy smokes, this thing has been flowering in the cold frame for months. And it's funny because when I was walking through the village, I could see, there's that annual euphorbia. I don't know if it's breathless white or something like that, that everyone plants. And I'm like, this is the same effect, but it just comes back every year. It just tons of tiny little flowers. And I'm telling you, go down on the cold frames after this talk. I guarantee you there's going to be tons of insects going crazy over it. The honeybees from David Link's hives will be all over it. It just is this billowy, wonderful texture. Again, sometimes these things, if they start looking a little tired, you can kind of cut them back, hit them with a little fertilizer, they'll reflush. But this blooms nonstop throughout the year. Again, another perennial plant of the year. If you're interested, I'll give a plug for the Perennial Plant Association. It's not just for industry people, it's for gardeners too. It's a fantastic resource, great people. But this calamint, not catmint, calamint is fantastic for the garden. This is one, oxeye. I'm trying to remember, there's another common name for it, but this is burning hearts. This is one that, typically when I see deer and rabbit resistant, I'm like, yeah, right. They'll eat a Buick if they're hungry. This one actually, we live up in Walkertown, 11 acres. Deer are constantly going through. They have not touched Heliopsis for us. That's one of the few things in the border that does not get, sheared, whether we want it sheared or not. They haven't touched it yet. Now, I will put that asterisk because I don't want any lawsuits. You told me that was deer resistant. If Bambi is hungry, Bambi will eat. But it's another great perennial, comes in late, kind of midsummer, real long season flowering. Again, another thing you could do cut as a cut flower, but burning hearts. Now this one, for those of you who went through the garden this spring, we've introduced a lot of these Ito peonies. This was a thing that started way back, 1948. This gentleman tried 20,000 crosses to cross a tree peony with a herbaceous peony. Got one seedling. Unfortunately, he didn't live to see it flower. Kind of sad. I feel like that happens to people. But luckily, there was a gentleman in New York that actually was able to obtain those plants, brought them to the US, and that gave us the foundation of these, what we call, they're intersectional peonies. So it's, if you're familiar with the beautiful tree peonies and then the herbaceous peonies, and what's great is you've gotten the best of both worlds. If you're looking at your herbaceous peonies right now in your garden, you're probably taking the shears out and just cutting them to the ground because they look horrible. It's gotten really good foliage quality from the tree peonies and also huge honking flowers. We're talking 8 inches across. And the colors on these are absolutely amazing. And when these first came out, they were, hundreds of dollars for a plant. We're not asking that much. Thanks to technology and learning, tissue culture, they've actually brought the cost down on these things. So we have a really good selection, and this is a good opportunity to get them in the ground now. They'll get nice and settled for this coming spring, and you'll get a fantastic bloom. So we've got candy apple. That's supposed to be one of the best reds out there. Noah Jolie, another one. This double bubble pink, Peachalicious. Obviously, people are thinking food. That's a good thing. I'm getting hungry. I didn't get lunch. But, just amazing colors. Some of these will transition from one color to another. But just fantastic. I mean, the nice purple, this hot tamale. We've got a really good selection. We've only got about 20 of each color. So, buy a whole set. But yeah, it's really good. I mean, right now they're not, obviously in flower, but getting them in the ground now is really going to get them set up for this coming spring. And they just get better every year. They just get bigger and bigger. This is a plant I think Adrian rolls her eyes about how much I wax poetic of. I love woodland phlox. It's just one of those perennials. I have fond memories back working at Plant Delight's nursery. His old woodland was just covered with it. And it's seeded around, so you would get every color imaginable. You get whites, pinks, light purples, dark purples, purples with a dark stem. And it was just a cloud, and it flowered a week before open house. Or that's when it would wrap up. And Tony would always say, if it actually would flower during open house, I could bankroll the nursery on it. But it's just a fantastic perennial. It'll form an evergreen ground cover throughout the winter, so it doesn't disappear. Real low growing, comes into flower, gets about a foot tall, fragrant flowers, and it will let the seed heads or the flower heads stay up. It will start to seed around your garden. And then, you'll get all sorts of different things. The beauty of seedlings and diversity. We've got two different ones. We've got Blue Moon, which is obviously that nice kind of purplish blue, and May Breeze, which is a nice white. And this is it's one of those plants that I think should be in every garden, and I don't see it planted enough. So it's my mission in life. This is another one, usually you think about tall garden phlox, powdery mildew. Pretty much anything that's coming out now has been screened for powdery mildew. This one actually originated in the wild. Miss Pruitt was walking along the Tennessee River, saw something a little different, thankfully propagated it. What's unique about this plant is when you think about your tall garden phlox, the flowers are much smaller, but there's way more of them. And Mount Cuba up in outside of Philadelphia, they do a lot of research. They'll take a plant group and they will just try to get all the different cultivars together, test them. They're not only looking at garden performance, they're looking now at insect attractiveness. This one attracted pollinators 10 to 1 over the straight species. And I think part of it is it just has more flowers on it. But it's a fantastic tall garden phlox, perennial plant of the year 2 years ago or last year, and just a great garden plant. And some people will say, "Oh, it's a cultivar. It's not a species." It's still giving you the benefits. Unless you're doing a prairie restoration, you're not going to plant out 1 million of these. It's a great garden plant that attracts pollinators. Our typical black-eyed Susan, we all have known Gold Sturm, which was the industry standard for a long time, but it does get a leaf spot to it. It looks a little ragged. This is one that right now it's in bloom in the blue and yellow garden. It's just a solid dome. I feel like you could just sit on it, but don't. Forrest actually was he's experimenting with the Chelsea chop in that garden to try to keep things back. And he was trying to delay the timing of it, but it's in full flower right now. This again was another perennial plant of the year. Are you getting a clue into who I pay attention to? I know that with Perennial Plant Association, you're getting good plants. It also was an All-American Selections winner. And that's not a typical thing for perennials out of their program. So, a lot of accolades for this one. Looks fantastic. Flowers for an extremely long time, but good foliage quality. This is an oldie, but a goodie. I mean, we're talking back to 1993 when this was selected by our own UNC Botanical Garden. Even over at in Chicago, they also do plant trials. They did a whole Solidago or goldenrod trial, was the #1 performer in their trials. I put an asterisk next to clump forming. Yes, it doesn't run, but it does clump bigger and bigger and bigger. And I guarantee you, probably by the 3rd year, you're digging it up and sharing it with other people. It does get big, but man, it is good. If you're walking out on the trails out by the boardwalk by Coliseum, there's some really nice clumps that Amy put out there that look fantastic. But yeah, just another great goldenrod. There's a well-known rule in plant taxonomy, but that the minute they change the name, they make it harder to pronounce. So we went from aster to Symphyotrichum. Rolls right off the tongue. I don't know why they couldn't just do Prince and just pick a symbol. Um, but we do, I mean, typically you're thinking fall, you're thinking asters. That's just something that timing wise we're always clued into. We've got a number of different ones. This one, Bluebird. Again, Mount Cuba, go on their website, go to their trials. It's a fascinating read about what they're trialing for, what they're looking for in their plants, and you just get great information. But the fact that they said this was their number one aster in their trials. It's a nice, light blue. We always joke in the blue and yellow garden, we really are stretching the definition of what blue is. But this one meets our standards of what blue is, but kind of a violet blue, typically standing about 3 to 4 feet tall in the garden. And you can push it into a little bit of shade. It doesn't have to be out in blazing sun. But this is smooth aster. You notice I'm not using the other name. This is another oldie but goodie. This is a shorter aster. It's only going to top out only about a foot to a foot and a half tall. Really nice pink, really long bloom time. This will stay in flower for at least a month. And the asters, obviously, they just pull in all the different insects. They go crazy over them. This is aromatic aster. This is a good one if you're like me and are in Farmer McGregor's camp and not the biggest fan of rabbits or deer. There's an aromatic oil in the leaves that, typically a good rule of thumb is if a plant has, a good scent, like you think about Alyssium or anise, when you crush it, it smells like black licorice, or your salvias. Anything that has that fragrance is usually a deterrent to most of the critters, usually. You know, just the disclaimer in the small font at the bottom, I never say never. Again, this is one that's going to top out only about a foot to 2 feet tall. We'll get about 3 feet wide. Really nice blue. Just another great aster for the garden. And our final aster, and I say final, we have white wood aster, which is a good aster for shade. It's Eurybia, so no longer aster, no, not Symphyotrichum. It's Eurybia. But that'll do well in your shady areas. But Lady in Black is great out in full sun. Tons and tons of little flowers, but in such quantity that it just completely coats the entire plant. This is another one. If you go into the cold frames up front in front of the conservatory, you'll see that one in flower. We always joke that say a lot of our natives had to go to Europe to get educated. This was a selection that was made by a Dutch plant breeder in Holland and then came back to the US. And he selected it because of these dark stems. The leaves are dark. So it gives you a whole nother dimension into a great native plant. So Lady in Black. Now, I will say, you'll see some of the photos that really show it dark. That's in slightly cooler climates. Things tend to wash out once we get really hot. But it's still a great plant. This is a Veronica, not Georgia like Georgia Bulldogs, but we're talking about the Republic of Georgia. This is a ground cover that we've got it planted in the borders out in front of the conservatory on the garden side. Only gets about an inch or two tall, evergreen, but it actually the leaves take a purple hue in the winter, and then come spring, just coated in cobalt blue flowers. This is one that I love. Interplant some of the miniature daffodils in amongst it. It's just a fantastic pairing. Unfortunately, the daffodil that you see in this photo is one called Huera that was one of my favorites, and I think the growers are not growing it anymore. It's hard as the dickens to find anymore, but it's a good ground cover. And again, if you're like me of trying to squeeze 3 times the amount of plants in one space as possible, tuck bulbs into the mass and they'll just pop up through it. So this is Georgia Blue Speedwell. We do have one vine in the mix. It's our native honeysuckle, because Lord knows I would not advocate for the Asian species. Major Wheeler has been regarded as absolutely the best one out on the market in terms of just clean foliage, doesn't get powdery mildew. It blooms nonstop. The hummingbirds love it. It's good after it does a big push in the early spring for flowering. Shear it a little bit, and you'll get more reflowering. Um, I am hoping to build up selections. There's some great selections of our native honeysuckle. I'm trying to remember, can't remember the name right now, but there's a great yellow version of it. But this has been a fantastic, fantastic plant for hummingbirds. Just running through the list, some things that I didn't get in here. We also have a serum, which it's an Asian evergreen ginger. So if you're looking for evergreen presents to carry you throughout the winter, this one's called Ling Ling, and it's called the Panda Face Ginger because the blooms, they're really cool. They're right at ground level because they're pollinated by beetles. So the beetles just walk in there, do their thing, walk right back out. But it's a fantastic kind of mottled variegation on it. But if you're looking to have presence in your garden, in your shade garden through the winter, the acerums are just fantastic plants. And this is one of the ones that they actually figured out how to tissue culture so they could get it out in masses. So that's Acerum Ling Ling. Let's see, what else is on? We've got, two different echinaceas. We have a Joe Pye weed that we saw this at the Perennial Plant Association's conference last year. It's a double flowered form of Joe Pye weed, which, one of the nice things is Joe Pye weed can get a little bit seedy in the garden. This one gives you the whole presence of Joe Pye weed, but with less seediness. We've got a couple different heucheras in the mix. We've got a purple or dark purple cardinal flower called black truffle. We've got two different types of bee balm, some monardas, tiarella. So a bunch of different perennials with a heavy emphasis on on our natives. So jumping into ferns. We were growing a lot of ferns, and apparently some caterpillar got into the cold frames and wiped out most of our ferns. So I scrambled and ordered more, and I think it's a learning lesson because PlantWorks, which is a wholesale nursery out in Rougemont, they do an awesome job growing ferns. So the ferns look fantastic. This one, Maris's hardy maidenhair fern. If you go in the conservatory, this is one that we tucked under the benches. It's hardy. It's absolutely hardy. It's actually, because it's a hybrid, it's got that hybrid vigor. Most of our maidenhairs, they're dainty and they actually sometimes behave that way in the garden. This one has a bit more vigor than your traditional maidenhair ferns, good winter hardiness. And as a general rule, ferns are not liked by deer. Hence the reason I'm really leaning into doing big sweeps of those in the garden, not only here, but at home. This one will top out at about 3 feet, but it's good to throw into containers for the summer, throw that with some caladiums. It's a great contrast in texture. But this is hands down one of the best maidenhair ferns out for our gardens. This is one of my favorite ferns. So if you're familiar with Japanese painted fern, that apparently had some hanky-panky in the garden and crossed with like lady fern, I think. And you just got this absolutely silver foliage to it. And planting these in mass really stands out. This was a happy accident back at my former job where I tucked some mardigan lilies in amongst it. And, it was great when you're walking through the garden and you're like, wow, who did that? But just a great contrast, and I'm telling you, it lights up the garden into a shady area. It will stand about 2 to 3 feet tall, obviously depending, most ferns want to have a bit of moisture. Some are a little bit more drought tolerant than others, but this one would like to be in a little bit moist situation. So ghost lady fern. This was one that I got first introduced to working at Plant Delight's nursery because it just had this stately presence to it. Dixie wood fern, and it's a naturally occurring hybrid that happens out in the wild. So this isn't, a Frankenstein, oh God, hybrids are bad. They happen. They happen in the wild. But it's a hybrid between log fern, and I'm trying to remember the common name for Dryopteris ludoviciana, but it's semi-evergreen. It will kind of start to lay down a little bit in the winter, but it just has this absolutely stately presence. It's clump forming, so it's not one of the ones that will run and spread. So it's one that you probably want to get a couple. Notice I'm by many. Um, but really nice dark green foliage, good presence in the garden. And then this one, I'd never paid that much attention to it until I worked with Doug Ruin on a perennial garden I did at the former garden I was at. And one of the things he described with this fern is, some of the ferns, they do the one big push of fronds in the spring, and that's it. And, my dad tells the horror story of up in New York looking out, and apparently my siblings had grabbed the ferns and pulled. So he just had the bare stipes to look at for the rest of the season. Hence the reason they didn't get to garden. Um, just me. So this one, Southern Wood Fern, will actually continue to put out fronds throughout the season. And this one can take not only shade, it can take sun. Doug did this wonderful combination of this bed almost filled with these with calla lilies popping out of it. And just that contrast in texture, I mean, it was so elegant. And this one will stand about 3 feet tall, but again, this one will spread, not as aggressive as some of the ferns, but I love the fact that it just keeps rejuvenating throughout the season. Grasses and sedges, really, it's hard to think fall without thinking about your ornamental grasses. And one of the big ones, of course, is Muhlenbergia capillaris, which I've been told is not capillaris. They've keyed it out. It's a different species. We've been getting it wrong for years, so we'll start going through the deprogramming process to start calling it Muhlenbergia sericea. But I'm not doing that right now. This is a great plant for, it's just coming into bloom right now. Real airy, pink, plumes. What's wonderful, you walk out in the morning when the dew's in the garden and it's just hanging on to these fronds and it's just ethereal looking. And these will top out about 3 to 4 feet. We are hitting, don't want to go too far into October, so you buy these, get these suckers in the ground. They're tough as nails. Just a fantastic, just light presence in the garden. And again, this one will top out at about 3 feet, probably about 4 feet wide. Just great. Well, we were so happy with this plant for years. Then all of a sudden, out of Superior Plant Nursery down in Florida, they grow a lot of plants by seed. We got this one. White Cloud. And this is one that the DOT has really leaned into. There's some great plantings of this when you head down towards Charlotte on I-85. This is a photo up at Brent & Becky's in Gloucester, Virginia in mid-December. It blooms a little later than the pink one. It has more of an upright shape to it, but it just gives you that texture that's just, you can't duplicate really without this plant. Just a fantastic grass for the garden. Leave this up throughout the season. Even when it goes brown, it still gives you that wonderful presence when you get dew in the garden. It's just stunning. And, probably about late winter, you can cut these back. And you don't want to cut too far down, go about 3 to 4 inches from the crown. But again, really durable grass. This is an oldie but goodie, but panicum, ironically, is kind of like an agricultural weed, but we've found forms that are really good in the garden. This is an old one called Shenandoah, and what's nice about this one is it starts about this time of year as we start getting these cooler nights, these red tints to it, or highlights to it that just really pops in the garden. There's been a couple new selections that have come out. I think Ruby Ribbons is another one, but this has always really been a good one. Tops out at about 3 to 4 feet tall. The other switchgrass that we have in the garden is one called Northwind. And if you're looking for like a really good vertical statement in the garden, Northwind doesn't flop. It's just straight up. It's a fantastic switchgrass. Whether it's you planting one or doing a series of these in the garden, just really gives you a nice vertical element in the garden. Shenandoah will top out at about 3 feet before it blooms, about 4 feet when it blooms. Northwind's a bit taller, more like 4 to 5 on that one. I love saying Schizachyrium. I think everyone should say it. Okay. It's audience participation, guys. Come on. This new one, Haha Tonka, was actually collected, seeds were collected at, I think, Haha Tonka State Park. Pete Oldoff is like the person about the native plant movement. He did the Lurie Garden outside in Chicago. I think I don't know if he did the High Line. But his plantings are absolutely amazing. I love what he does in looking at all seasons of how plants contribute throughout the season. But they took seed back, made selection after selection after selection to get really a nice blue-green foliage. And when it flowers, those flowers, kind of like the Muhlenbergia, really capture the light on it and capture the dew. So this is a new one that we've added. Before it comes into flower, it's only about 1.5 feet tall. It'll top out once it goes into flower about 3 to 4 feet. And then if that doesn't float your boat, there's this new one called Chameleon, which is variegated. So throughout most of the growing season, it's kind of white and green variegation. As we start getting these cooler nights, you're going to start seeing these pinks and reds start coming into it. And this one actually stays pretty low. It only gets about 2 feet tall, even when it's in flower. So these are two really nice little blue stems. It's one of our native grasses. Always trying new ones. And Hoffman Nursery, another fantastic nursery, wholesale nursery in our state. Hoffman has, they were right at the beginning edge of the whole, native grasses, ornamental grasses, and they are one of the best grass suppliers in this country, and really good people. Got to get them to give a talk. Now diving into shrubs, I just did a segment with Shannon Smith with Fox 8, and we were talking about, the reason that fall is always, fall is for planting. Most of your woody plants go through 2 root growth cycles a year. So, getting them planted now, you get a root growth cycle now, you get another one in spring. They're set up twice as good for dealing with our usual drought during the summer. And this is a plant that it flew under the radar for a long time for me, and I don't know why, because it's a multi-season plant. Red chokeberry, what you get beautiful white flowers in the spring, nice foliage throughout, the growing season. You get these fantastic red fruit that'll persist into winter. It tends to not be one of the first things that the birds go for. They'll kind of work their way through the season of what they'll zone in on. Fall color is absolutely fantastic on Aronia. It does tend to have a suckering, spreading habit, and this one will actually grow in standing water, but it'll also grow in garden soils, no problem. Just a fantastic multi-season plant. This is one that I'd always have in the garden. We've got 2 different pepperbush, clethra. This is a fantastic summer flowering plant, fantastic fragrance on this. This happens to be ruby spice, which is pretty much the best pink flowered one at this point. The plant breeders haven't got into it. Also, multi-season interest. You get great yellow fall color on this. Bob Lyons, my former director from the Ralston Arboretum, he has a nice screened-in porch that these are surrounding the screened-in porch. So during the summer, that fragrance is just pouring in. These, again, do have a suckering habit. I remember seeing where they tried to do a formal planting, and I saw they did clethra, and I'm like, let's revisit this in 3 years, because the clethra was popping up through everything else. And I was like, not quite good execution on this. The other one we have is hummingbird, which tends to be a little bit smaller stature than ruby spice. Ruby spice will top out probably about 4 feet tall. Hummingbird about 1 foot or so, shorter than that. So 2 really nice, our natives. You'll see these kind of in the eastern part of the state very easily. Harry Lauder's walking stick. This is such a great plant for winter interest. If you do arrangements, they're great to cut stems. And what is significant about the ones that we're selling, these are from tissue culture, so they're on their own roots. If you ever planted one of these that had been grafted, sometimes the understock would start sending straight branches up, and then it's a whole maintenance nightmare of constantly having to do this. The fact that it's on its own roots, anything that's coming up has got that contorted look. It's, reading up on this, the fact that it was discovered as a sport in the 1800s, and it's persisted that long. I think it was a comedian started using the stick and his name was Harry Lauder, and that's when it got the common name of Harry Lauder's walking stick. But this is just fantastic. Early spring, those catkins will just make it look like it's just lit up with color. But really, winter is when it shines of having that structure in the garden. Um, Daphne. Now, I got to admit, when we got this in, I'm like, oh, let's see how many of these actually make it to the plant sale. Because Daphnes are, they're beautiful plants, but Lord, they're prima donnas. I mean, the minute you comment, oh, that's a beautiful Daphne, you just signed its death sentence. It's like avert your eyes, just smell it. This one, I'm actually, I want to get one of these from my yard. It's actually a hybrid between the common one, Daphne odora, that we grow, and Daphne blua. So I've got to say it has been clean in the nursery. We haven't lost a single one, and that's usually one of the worst conditions that you'd have Daphnes. And the fragrance is a Daphne. I mean, what more do I have to say? Just fantastic fragrance in late winter, early spring. I'm cautiously optimistic about this. I'm going to walk out and they'll all be dead now. Um, and I love Daphne Blua because someone told me they wanted to name a selection and call it Little Boy, so it would be Little Boy Blua. But bump. Okay, that wasn't me. That was Sean Hogan. But no, I mean this Daphne, I am really excited about how well it's performed in the nursery. It's already loaded with buds for this coming year, so we'll see how this one performs in the garden. Um, I do not know why we do not plant our deciduous hollies more. I'm on a mission to collect all of them and have them planted out on the property. Winter Red is an old cultivar that was selected by Simpson Nursery out in Indiana years ago, I mean, decades ago. And it actually threw a branch sport, which became winter orange, winter gold. So it's kind of, I would not call it gold. It's more like a peachy orange, but just fantastic plants for the winter garden. These can go into a wet condition. They can go into regular garden soils. I wouldn't put them in a dry area. And the birds, I remember, we had tons of these planted over at High Point University. And I remember you'd walk through and they're all buried. And the next day we would get descended upon by birds and not a single fruit left. So it does, it's one of those things that it has a role in the ecosystem. It's a great food source. All of our hollies are great for that. These will top out at about 6 to 8 feet. Only thing we didn't think of was we didn't get the male. So pick up one called Southern Gentleman. And it's important to know which ones because I think Jim Dandy is another one, but Southern Gentleman is one that you got to pair their blooming times. Some flower, if they're from up north, they flower later. So you have to have a male that, does it at the same time. And avoid what happened at great NC State University, great horticulture program, planted on campus, huge sweep of these. And the grounds crew noticed, oh, that one's not flowering. It's sick. So they cut it out. Oh God, next year, nothing's fruiting. Must have spread. Cut them all out. They removed the male. You've got to have a male and a female. And these, typically the ratio I've heard from one to every 6 or 1 to every 10. If we also have a lot of other like American hollies, that seems to also do, be a good pollinator. But, just tuck the male in the back. The females are the showstoppers on these. But it's my mission to get these into our landscapes more because they're fantastic. I mentioned Illicium earlier. This is a great plant. If you crush the leaves on any of the Illicium, it smells like black licorice. They're generally left alone by deer. This is one, Tony Avent went down to Superior Plants, who, they originated the white muley. He was walking through their seed crops and just started picking out, oh, variegated one, ooh, gold one. And he brought a whole bunch of these back. This was back during Adrian and I's time at Plant Delights. And he planted out a bunch of different gold clones. And this is the one that performed hands down the best. The one on the bottom right, that's at Duke Gardens the day after we had, I think, 208 hours below freezing. It does fantastic. Now, I will say, do not put it in a heavily exposed site. It will kind of bleach out. It likes a little bit of, like a high tree canopy. That's when they really shine. And in winter, those stems will kind of get a red color to them. It's just a fantastic, broadleaf evergreen for our gardens that's deer resistant. And this one just brings a whole nother dimension with that color to them. The flowers are completely insignificant. You would not even notice that it's flowering. And this one will get big, but you can hack these things back and they don't mind. So Florida Sunshine Anise. I don't know if there's any other, there's Banana Appeal. I think we planted that one out because I'm like, how is this different? Or is just someone trying to do their own thing? Florida Sunshine is still really the standard by all others. Itea, this is another fantastic multi-season shrub. You get these white flowers, and there's all sorts of different selections out there. I think there's one called Longspire that we propagated from Ralston that has even longer, racemes on it, but gets really, these nice white flowers in spring. Gets fantastic fall color going into fall, and it holds on to its leaves well into winter. This is one that, again, just like Clethra, it's a suckering shrub, so be mindful of where you're planting it. If you have a formal area, if you got a nice boxwood hedge, probably don't put this there because you'll have Itea popping up through it. Will tolerate really moist soils, but also your regular garden soils. This one, I think, originated from Miss Henry no, oh God, I can't remember if she was with Swarthmore or can't remember, but it was Miss Henry, and this was Miss Henry's garden. This is a fantastic viburnum. I don't know what, it does get some good size. What I loved about this plant, you get, the white flowers in the early season. The foliage is this glossy, almost like you shellacked it. Just fantastic glossy green foliage on this. The fruit will transition from white to pink to purple as it ages. If you can get a different clone as well, that gets better fruit set. Also, the foliage will get these kind of red to maroon to purple tones going into fall and winter. So it's a fantastic, again, multi-season. This is a native plant. We have, I still haven't looked to see, we've got a bunch of it that's down along the creek, and I'm trying to pay attention to where it actually originated from. But definitely if you go up in the Blue Ridge, hiking up there, I've seen it up there. There's a similar species, but I can't remember how the difference is. But this is just a fantastic plant, and I don't know why we don't grow it more. We actually have a number of different trees in the mix. A couple of the ones that I wanted to highlight. This is a horse chestnut that I grew at High Point, and it was different. And I'm like, for me, it doesn't matter. I just want them all. But it was when fall hit that I'm like, okay, I get the name now, Autumn Splendor. Just every year got this pumpkin orange fall color to it. When it flowers in spring, the flowers are kind of like a lime green yellow. So, not the showiest of flowers. But another thing, a lot of our buckeyes or horse chestnuts get a thing called summer scorch, where the leaves, like if you've noticed out in the meadow, there's a cluster of red buckeyes that have not had leaves for the last month. It's because that summer scorch hits them. This one, the leaves stay on it, gets fantastic fall color. It is a small tree, only getting about 25 feet tall, but the minute I saw this on an availability list, I had fond memories of growing it, and I was like, gotta have that one. But just fantastic fall color on this plant. This is hands down regarded as the best pink Coosa dogwood that's out there. This came out of Rutgers maybe about 10 years ago, because I remember getting a trial plan of this. If you look at this photo in the top right, right in the front center is this Scarlet Fire. To the left is pretty much what pink was before that. So light years beyond in terms of color on this. Fantastic foliage. We all love our native dogwood, but it has a lot of baggage in terms of anthracnose, powdery mildew. They're trying to breed more resistance into it. Tom Rainey's got a fantastic one that we'll have to try to get that He's used Coosa to get disease resistance in it, but it has the look of our native dogwood. But until those really start coming out, this is hands down the best pink Coosa dogwood that you'll find. The foliage, even right now, still looks fantastic. It'll get, reds and bronze for fall color. You still get those red fruit. Um, Ironic thing is when you look at the fruit on our native, they're those little small fruits, eaten by birds. Well, the fruit on Coosa dogwood, those were eaten by monkeys. We don't have monkeys, we have squirrels. They tend to eat the fruit on these, but this is, just a fantastic Coosa dogwood to have in the garden. This is a fantastic plant that came out of Tom Rainey's breeding program up in outside of Asheville. If you've ever heard the story of the Ben Franklin tree, Franklinia, this was a really cool plant. The Bartrams, when they were exploring, they camped one night on the Altamaha River. They woke up in the morning and they're under these trees with these amazing, white flowers. They almost look like fried eggs. And they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. They gathered seed. Well, they came back years later to get more, couldn't find the tree. Tree has never been seen in the wild since. So this is my poster child of why horticulture is good. If they had not gathered that seed, then it would not be on the planet. So Tom was looking at Franklinia, and Tom being Tom was like, what's related to it? We have our loblolly bay. If you go down on the eastern part of the state, driving down towards Wilmington, you'll see these blooming on the side of 40 in the forests. They're related. They're in the camellia family. He crossed the two and got Gordlinia. And this thing will start midsummer, come into flower, and it doesn't stop until pretty much frost. Really fantastic, really glossy dark green leaves. Colleague Sam Barr at the University of Maryland has these planted on the Maryland campus, and I mean, they are just absolutely stunning looking. They will get, and this is where I get confused because he has just this Gordlinia, then Tom being Tom and not being satisfied, double the chromosomes on it and name that one Sweet Tea. One of these drops most of its leaves during the winter, the other one doesn't, and I can never get it sorted out in my head, which is why I'm trying to plant them side by side. But it will get, it's what's called tardily deciduous, so it'll hang on to its leaves for a long time. But if you've ever grown Franklinia or seen them in the fall, they get amazing fall color. That got imparted into this. So the leaves will get this really rich red and bronze color. Just a cool plant, and it grows like a weed. Not seeds around like a weed, grows like a weed. So fantastic, small to 20-foot trees. So think like dogwood size. And think about it. How many trees are out there flowering right now? This is. And for those of you who are fans of Lois in the garden, this is another one of our yellow flowered magnolias. This is Yellowbird. This happens to be a couple shades darker yellow, not like a really intense yellow. That's Judy Zook, which I really want to get. But this is Yellowbird, nice yellow, fragrant flowers. It is later flowering, so it avoids that whole issue that we all have with saucer magnolias where, oh, look, there's color on the buds. Oh, look, 28 degrees in the forecast. But this is one, it will get big. This yellow fall color all came out, or not yellow fall color, yellow flower color, all came out of our native Magnolia acuminata, which is a big tree. So, it's kind of like this was one of the earlier iterations. They've continued to breed to bring them down in size, but this one will get some serious size to it. You're looking at eventually 40 feet tall. But man, I would love to see one of the original specimens to see a 40-foot tall one in flower. But bringing in some other different deciduous magnolias into the fold. This is one that we only have a handful of these. If you've ever grown Tupelo or black gum, this was one that came, God, I can't remember when this came onto the market. I remember seeing the Neubauers at Hidden Hollow Nursery first got this. It's a variegated Tupelo. So it has that white, they kind of described it as gray. That's a very different definition of gray to me, but variegated foliage. Now it is a slow grower. It's not a really fast grower, but gives you this fantastic kind of white on green, kind of almost a yellowish green, but will transition as the cooler temperatures come in. The typical fall color of Tupelo will come in, and those whites will start turning sort of pink. We only have a handful of these, but this is a slow, not going to get it that big. So you're looking at about only about 12 feet in 10 years. So if you're looking for a nice variegated tree for the garden, this is definitely one for it. These are from the Ralston Arboretum. How many of you are familiar with the Okami cherries that come into flower in spring? They're ubiquitous. They're all over the place. We overplanted them. This is one of the parents of Okami, the Fuji cherry. And these they're small, small leaves. The leaves actually persist. It's got good disease resistance, unlike, like our typical weeping cherries that pretty much have not had leaves for the last month. This one gets good fall color to it. This is one I still remember seeing this in Japan of, oh my God, it's a columnar cherry. It's columnar, it's really tight, upright growing, not a big cherry. So, if you want the effect of a cherry in the garden, but don't have quite the space, it's almost a large shrub rather than a tree. Absolutely covered in these, kind of light pink flowers in the spring. It's a fantastic little cherry. Again, this is one that we did cuttings of from the Ralston Arboretum. I think proven winners through I can't remember what marketing name they threw on it, but that's the original Japanese name on it. The Ralston, this is the one that the only photos I could find were of the plant that I took cuttings of at the Ralston, but this is a weeping Fuji cherry, and this is weeping in a very broad sense, in that it doesn't like strictly weep. It's kind of like, I think I'll grow up a little bit this year. It just kind of spreads and kind of arches on itself. But it's one of those plants that you really, if you want to, kind of sculpt a plant, this would be a fantastic specimen to do in the garden. This one is more of a white than a pink. Again, really good fall color to them. It's going to top out wider than it is tall. I kind of feel like I'm sometimes following that model. But just again, this was one that I could not find much information on aside from the Ralston Arboretum. So it's not something you will find pretty much anywhere else. Just running through the list of some other things that I just could not, get things in there. We've got a really nice, if you ever have grown Perodia as a tree or Persian ironwood, fantastic fall color on those. We've got this one called Golden Bell Tower. So it's a more upright growing one. Tough, absolutely tough as nails, gets exfoliating bark as it ages. But this one will get kind of a yellow to orange fall color. If you've been walking out on the boardwalk by Coliseum, you know that we've got the tunnels of the weeping bald cypress. That's Cascade Falls. That one only gets as tall as you basically stake it. Then if you go into the center, there's the two bald cypress that are going up, and all the secondary branches come down. That's Falling Waters. We actually have that one for sale. And that's just, it kind of looks like a Dr. Seussian plant. I've always loved that one in the garden. We've got Japanese Stewardia. This is related to Franklinia. It's in that same family. Amazing fall color. If you've ever gone up to the North Carolina Arboretum outside of Asheville in the fall, they have these planted in the parking lot, and the fall color is, who needs flowers? Gets, these amazing reds and oranges, just fantastic small tree. Let's see, what else? Got a really cool Distilium called Spring Frost, and what's nice about that one, it actually, when it leaves out in spring, it leaves out white, and then will age to green. So it's just a fantastic thing to tuck into. I wouldn't put it out necessarily in full blazing sun, but in the shade, really good evergreen. We've got two different oak leaf hydrangeas. One is called Snowflake, that has double flowers, and it kind of just keeps building on itself. And it's a fantastic cut flower, even going into fall as a dried flower. So keep an eye on that. And then there's also ruby slippers, which is a more dwarf oak leaf hydrangea. Um, Leucothoe scarletta, which is dog hobble, another great native evergreen, but when it goes into fall, it goes red purple. It's fantastic. It goes persists throughout the winter. What else? I think that covers a lot of things. We do have Lindera spice bush coming in, so if you want spice bush swallowtails, if you plant it, they will come. That's Lee Nading. I remember she was bringing those in, and that's when I started paying attention. We have spicebush growing along the little creek in Reynolda, and early spring, kind of sulfur yellow flowers. It's one of the most nondescript plants. Fantastic fall color. I wish to God we could vegetatively propagate those because it would be nice to get a fruiting form of it. Like I think we were over at a garden across the road, and everyone in his garden is male. He does not have a female. And it's like that's the benefit of a cultivar of, you could add a whole nother dimension to this plant if you could select the female. But c'est la vie. So, again, this is always kind of fun of trying to get a good mix of, tried and true, just great plants that you probably have seen before, but throwing in some sometimes weird stuff in there. Because, as Mark Wethington says, life is too short for boring plants. I don't know if we have any questions online. No? Oh, good. So just running through a little bit of housekeeping. Again, shortly after the talk, the email will go out to all friends of the gardens with the pre-order form. You can pre-order up until basically the Wednesday before the plant sale, 8 o'clock. I slide that little button and no more orders because John wants to go to bed. We will get them processed as they come in. We do try to stay on top of the inventory of, hopefully not selling out well, we'll sell out ideally, but anyway, trying to get that all sorted out. I'll get the orders tabulated, email them out to you. There's a link, you pay online. We do ask, just for organization, for y'all to prepay before you pick up. It just makes it so much smoother because I'm telling you that first onslaught, right in the morning for pickup, it gets a little crazy. And if we aren't having to deal with, paying for things at that point, you can still shop if you're a friend on that Friday. Other than that, you can, the plant sale is open to the public on Saturday, September 27th. That goes from 8 until 2. Ideally, we're done by noon and we go home. No plants left. So any questions? Yes. Well, are you saying I'm long-winded? I can do that. Yeah. I'll see if I'll drop it into Google Drive and send out a link to it. I hadn't thought about doing that. Thank you. I learn something new every day. Just anyone else? But you won't have my delightful commentary. Again, thank you all. I mean, this is, again, it's a big driver of becoming friends of the garden and supporting the gardens. And also it's a big driver of just keeping the gardens free and open to the public, which I think we all want to happen. Good things happening in the garden. We've got a fantastic team that really pulls everything together, but we couldn't do it without our volunteers or you as our donors. So thank y'all.